All right, folks. Hey, we'll get started in just a minute. Go ahead and take a seat. I think we got a full house. How's everyone doing today? Good. All right. Everyone got their threat hats on? Okay. Yes? Get everyone started. Get a seat. You get the other mic?
Okay. Yep. Apparently the tweet about free beer at this session worked.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so we got a lot to cover here. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We're going to go ahead and present. We're covering some of the top tips in threat prevention. And afterwards, we'll be taking questions probably outside in the hall at the end of the hallway because they're back-to-back sessions and there's a lot of you. So we'll get going through. So I'm John Harrison. I'm a Senior Product Manager for Threat Prevention. On stage with me is...
Hi, I'm Tim Mather. I'm the CISO at Cadence. I've been doing security for a number of years. It's been a while since I did hands-on firewall administration. John's going to cover the technical aspects, obviously, since he's in product management, and I'm going to give you some, if you will, color commentary, more from a business perspective around deploying PANs.
Yeah, Tim's going to keep me straight for the Palo Alto Networks solution. So, contrary to popular belief, there is no easy button. You will not be getting a step-by-step of here's what I go do and I'm magically protected. I think Lee did a really good job of setting the stage, talking about the kill chain here. And as you look at the attacks and the adversaries who are focused to get inside your companies, between 8 and 5 every day, there are folks sitting there looking, trying to figure out how to get inside your company, your partners, and everyone else. Each part and step in the kill chain and the attack life cycle is an opportunity for you to break up that attack. And so that way, you want to make sure you're doing a lot of the best practices and things we've talked about. So you've probably seen some of the sessions already, so I'm going to just roll it out. Reducing the attack surface. It sounds really trivial, but it's actually a really important start. Being able to then block known threats and really focus on preventing the unknown threats. How many of you were in the App ID session with Nick Campagna? Okay, great. Fantastic session. If you didn't go, make sure you go back through because really getting a full App ID policy together is a key part. SSL decryption. How many were you in Mike Jacobson's session? Okay. How many of you were in the real-world attack session with Eric Youngins? Okay, that's really setting the stage. What I'm going to do is cover just a few key additional tips that are going to hopefully be able to raise the bar for you from a prevention capability and be able to help you out. So let's get started. Tim, you want to start off first?
Yeah, I will. So we just recently have rolled out PANs on a global basis on our perimeter, and we'll be expanding that deployment from there. We displaced another firewall. You all know the company very well. It will remain unknown. It was a non-App ID aware implementation. And my analogy on that is that we went from driving a Fiat Panda to driving a Ferrari. They're both Italian-made cars, but they drive a little differently. And so one of the considerations with deploying the PANs is that you better be ready to actually take advantage of all those features. It's very interesting that our executive management team, we said, well, yes, we have all of this in the policies, and we should have been enforcing this for years. And like, oh, we really are going to start doing these things? It's like, yeah, we are, right? And that actually caused them some, I won't say concern, but they had to rethink some things. And are the policies really up to date? And we really are going to do these things. And we really are paying attention to all the global considerations around privacy and some of the cultural aspects as well. So it's been interesting.
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about, blocking dangerous file types. There's a lot of dangerous files that are out there. And again, what I'm doing for each one of the best practices here, I'm kind of laying out the kill chain steps at risk and then the examples. When we're talking about dangerous file types, there's a couple different things. Lee was pretty clear in talking about there is malware and there's exploits. So what I'm going to cover today right now is malware. And again, you can see each step of the kill chain, but malware can be delivered in so many different ways. Again, picture the adversaries sitting there focused on getting the malware inside your company any way they can, whether it's through email, whether it's through a link, whether it's through your employee's webmail. Maybe it's actually something that redirects you to an FTP to bring down the malware. There's lots and lots of different channels. And again, so you need to look at every one of those attack vectors, not just one. So I'm going to walk through an example here. So this is one. I grabbed this a blog post that covered this. So a lot of the emails are very targeted with a lure. So they're convincing. And so in this case here, we've got a link taking you to, and again, this is a campaign that's delivering a lot of different links. There's probably 10, 15 different links that we saw, and takes you to then executable and a package to download. But of course, when the employee looks at it, what is it? Yeah, that's not a PDF. That's an executable with a PDF icon. So they're trying to trick your employees, your customers, folks that you're working with, any way possible they can. Here's another one actually I grabbed in my webmail. Again, you've maybe done a good enough job securing Outlook, and because Outlook and Exchange blocks a number of file types automatically to begin with, they're going to start sending links via sending emails to your employees' webmail. And all of a sudden, if you then click on this attachment, you're now bypassing all your layers of protection. So inside this zip is a package. Any guesses what this is? No, this one's different. It's actually a screensaver. What happens if you double-click a screensaver on a Windows system? It executes. It's just like any other portable executable. You double-click it, it runs. So the question to you is, why should these be allowed inside an enterprise environment? So right now we've got this as an example of going through webmail and coming in. And a screensaver inside an enterprise, is there really a business use for this? So right now, if you take a look at some of the examples, here's the Carbonite gang steals $1 billion from banks. A CPL, that's a control panel, again. Double-click on it, and it works just like another executable. A .pif, PIF, is, again, Zeus attacks using targeted attacks. How about LNK? A link is a shortcut file. And here, there's targeted attacks using help files. And again, each one of these are examples of dangerous file types that really you're going to try and reduce the attack surface by not bringing them into your enterprise at all. So if you break it down to kind of a policy, is what we feel is a best practice: block all executables from coming into the enterprise. And especially there's other file types such as help files and link and shortcut files. Now, of course, you want to also alert on every other file type going in and out of your enterprise to give you visibility. There are a few different options and considerations, and Tim and I will talk through what are some of the other things. If you're not able to block them, at least absolutely forward them to Wildfire so you can get a verdict on those. Or possibly a continue page so that you break up a drive by download, or at least you put a speed bump in front of the employees to say, hey, company policy is you're not downloading executables. Are you sure you want to do this? Because oftentimes employees aren't really sure. So if you break this down into kind of some individual file types. PE files include exe, CPL, DLL, OCX, SCR. Each one of these types, from a policy standpoint, you need to take a look and through which ones have a business need inside your environment, may be required for applications to work. And that's why there is no cut and paste magical policy for every one of you sitting in this room. You need to take these things into consideration to build the policy to protect you, knowing the risk and the attacks that are going on as they're trying to get in. There's a lot of different available actions: alert, block, continue. Continue page is the pop-up, the speed bump. Forward to Wildfire. You can do continue and forward. So Tim, this sounds really simple. Just start, blocking everything, and you're magically protected.
No, absolutely. going to like that. I happen to be in the software industry, and we have about 4,000 developers all over the world, including India, China, Israel, and other places. So blocking everything, absolutely forget it. Looking at this, and this is our real-world list right here, our #1 file types that are exchanged are Windows executables, EXEs. #2, DLLs. Well, that's software developers exchanging files back and forth, not only between employees, but with other third parties who we're under contract with for development, and it includes our application engineers who are on site at customers trying to install this. So the point of it is that one of the big learning lessons that we've had out of deploying the PANs is it really has forced my team to understand what the business is doing much better than previously. We have to get very granular about what can be blocked, where can it be blocked, et cetera. Is there any reason why the G&A departments, finance, legal, et cetera, need to exchange executables? No, absolutely not. But that means then that I've got to know where all of those application developers sit, what VLANs are they on, in what offices, et cetera. So as John said, there's no easy button. Okay? Knowing the business considerations here becomes very becomes very important for a successful deployment of the PANs.
Yeah, we're giving you a lot of visibility, and that's the thing. It's going to get into policy. There's certain folks in IT that are going to actually need to download tools. One of the other considerations is making sure you have a policy to allow for applications to update, whether it's Internet Explorer or Chrome or iTunes and things like that.
Yeah, basically everything is auto-update these days. So. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to blocking dangerous websites, URL filtering. Quick poll in the room first. How many of you do have a file blocking policy today? Okay, so hopefully by the end of the week when you get back, you'll start looking at taking advantage of getting a robust file blocking policy. How many of you have URL filtering with PanDB as a subscription today? All right, so what I'm going to talk through right now is, again, reducing the attack surface. There's a lot of bad or dangerous places out there on the web, and I want to make sure you're taking full advantage of that. So whether it's a site we've categorized as malware, whether it's a site that is phishing, unknown domains. Should we allow any employees to go visit unknown categorized domains that are out there? So let's take a look. Park domains, questionable proxy avoidance. So some of those dangerous sites, you're all familiar with exploit kits. Exploit kits where they've compromised sites. In this case, a couple thousand WordPress blog sites were out there. And again, as some of your employees may be visiting those, or a malvertisement redirects you to one of those, what do you get? You've got 3,000 different domains that are all dynamic DNS domains. So these are the websites that now you're redirected to that are delivering a potentially malicious payload. So, and again, this is just one exploit kit campaign, and there's a lot of dangers, a lot of bad things that are out there. So one of the things with, I was actually able to do with autofocus, I went through and I actually took a look through, and I took a look at malware that's interacted with dynamic DNS domains. I took some of the top ones that are out there. And so the results here are the top dynamic DNS domains and the percent of those files that are malicious. So no-ip.biz, 99% of those files were malicious that had some interaction, either C2 or were downloaded. So in no way am I saying that dynamic DNS is bad and don't go use it, but I'm saying understand the risks and implications of a guy who's setting up a remote access Trojan to then a dark comment or whatever to get inside your enterprise. They're probably going to use dynamic DNS, or exploit kits are going to set up and use dynamic DNS, and there's associated risks with those. Here's another blog post talking about the Angler exploit kit. So this is an interesting one. As you follow on, there's no one URL in here. You're first at a compromised site that, again, is a real site. After, through some of the files submitted to Wildfire, changed to malware. It then redirects you to port 8085 web browsing, where it served up the Sweet Orange exploit kit. Again, it's compromised, and that's now a malware category. But the next 4 or 5 sites were all unknown category websites. So there's a lot of bad things. Again, as you saw in Eric's presentation, the malware author may go through and reserve hundreds of different domains through different kind of capabilities and set those up, or they may be used in domain generation algorithms that are out there using for different malware, either for C2 activity, being able to download information, but there's a lot of risk out there. Is it inherently bad? I think that's part of the thing, but there's a few different areas here. So the best practice would be using PanDB, URL filtering. And again, I don't care if you have a WebSense or Blue Coat or some other solution. The information we put inside our malware category is really phenomenal. Why? Because it's fed by Wildfire. So the samples targeting you, the samples we're interacting with, the intelligence that's going into purely just the malware category alone is really fantastic. And that's where we're getting a lot of protection, stopping a lot of bad activity. Why let someone interact with a known bad website that the Palo Alto Networks collective and you and our customers may have had some interaction? One of the new things that you're seeing up here, did you guys know we have a new Dynamic DNS category? Anyone know that? So this is something we just put out a couple months ago, I think a month and a half ago. And again, you saw my slide, so make sure you go home. When you go home, take a look at this category and determine what you're going to do with this. So there was in the release notes an announcement in the content updates that this went out. One of the other things that we're continuing to do updated algorithms, but the phishing category, we got some exciting new algorithms that are going in behind the scenes. One other really cool thing that you can do, again, this is keeping users from the bad or dangerous websites that are out there. One of the really cool things you can do is, I talked about file blocking. What I want you to do is look at creating a policy with file blocking together with the URL filtering. So let's say you disagree with the idea that you want to block executables. What you can do is actually set up a policy to say, if there is a unknown category website, do not allow employees to download executables. Or maybe if it's an unknown, questionable, maybe it's parked, or absolutely definitely if it's a malware category. So this gives you another option to be able to reduce the attack surface and be intelligent the way you're delivering your protection. So one other option, again, the continue page as a speed bump can be really useful. So Tim, that sounds really, really easy. Any considerations and thoughts?
No, I mean, even from the what would seem to be no-brainer categories of, let's say, we're going to block porn and gambling, you can't believe some of the pushback. We have a site in the Boston area.
I won't ask about that.
Yeah, we have a site in the Boston area. We have quite a few developers back there off of it, and of course we banned gambling or blocked, gambling or gaming, whatever you want to call it. And we had an employee who raised a ruckus and ended up filing an official complaint with HR because the Massachusetts lottery was blocked. And my response would have been tough, go do it from home. But HR got all upset about it. And then the issue became, well, when you throw up the splash page, who does it say you should contact? And my team and me say, don't contact us, it's an HR policy. And HR says, we don't want anything to do with this. So we ended up creating our own splash page that actually, in effect, redirects to PAN that says, if you think this site has been miscategorized, put in the domain here, et cetera, sort of thing. But I mean, that seems to me to be a kind of a no-brainer, and yet you still have some issues there that you have to work through. On the malicious site, just to give you some idea of the volume of what this is, and I mean, I don't think we're a medium-sized company. We're about 7,000 employees. We are around the world off of that. But one firewall, 1 week, more than 121,000 sessions were classified as malicious. We're seeing on average about 1.3% of all web traffic is classified as malicious. So that's a lot of attempts to block. Certainly something that you ought to be taking advantage of.
Yeah, I think from Eric's session you saw just how simple it is to either compromise a mainstream site or using domain generation algorithms. There's a lot of bad things out there. We all need to do more to be able to raise the bar to try and reduce the attack surface. The one thing about dynamic DNS, again, each one of those things, some of us may have home security monitoring cameras, because we're all good security folks. And again, you set up the security camera with a dynamic DNS domain so you can be able to log in to see your security camera or log into your home system, because employees should be able to always log into their home systems, right? Yeah. So there's, again, one of the things as I'm laying out these best practices, so caveat, do not go in tomorrow and instantly go set and deploy these. These are goals, and these should be your strategies. One of the things is, again, you want to make sure of the business impact and really what the implications can be. So make sure you have a plan, make sure that you have good kind of understanding of what that's going to be. Start with alert and get to block.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely start in training or alert mode off of this and get a good handle on what's going on. You'll want that data when you go back to, for example, the CIO or the executive management, whoever, and saying, listen, I've got a comfort level on what this looks like and what the disruptions or hopefully not disruptions to the business might be. So definitely start there off of it. And again, what it really forces you to do is you've got to know how the business operates, and you've got to take into account privacy considerations around the world and various cultural nuances. Can't tell you that enough. I mean, it'll bring it up, believe me, and you need to be prepared for it.
Yeah, so again, take a look at combining the URL filtering together with the file blocking. It's a really powerful capability, and again, along your way to be able to reduce the attack surface. Really powerful capability. All right, so let's talk about blocking known vulnerabilities, malware, exploits using threat prevention. All of you have an IPS and spyware policy today? All of you using threat prevention? Okay. So there's a lot of, as you're looking at vulnerabilities being exploited, the attackers are either trying to use client-side or server-side vulnerabilities to take advantage of those. So being able to block and prevent. One of the key things you first saw was Lee talking about inline and prevention. We're being able to stop these attacks, and so just having a bunch of passive tap IDS sensors alerting all over the place, is that really helping you? Yes, there are attacks going on, and being able to prevent those is absolutely essential. So as Eric talked about using the RIG exploit kit, the exploit kits work by starting off with a website or a link or somewhere where the malware author is set up and being able, sends you to a place to then redirect. The exploit kit senses what you're vulnerable to, then exploits the vulnerability on your endpoint system. And so being able to make sure that you can then, and once that vulnerability is exploited, they can send anything pretty much they want. Again, they've established a presence on your endpoint and can be able to deliver and put anything down there. Rinse and repeat, continue after that. So IPS, the threat prevention, is one of the key places to start in preventing bad things from happening. So one of the things I want you to look at, again, it's preventing the client-side vulnerability, server-side, the Internet Explorer, the Microsoft Tuesday, the Adobe Reader, Adobe Flash vulnerabilities, things like that. The threat research team that I have the pleasure of working with, again, 319 CVEs that Microsoft announced last year, and 22% of those Palo Alto Networks threat researchers discovered and worked with Microsoft in making sure they were fully patched before they were announced and disclosed. That's a pretty powerful capability from a threat research team and be able to deliver protection on that. We delivered more than 1,000 different vulnerability signatures, but also responding quickly to things like heartbleed and shell shock. So being able to take advantage of that protection and prevention is absolutely essential. So the best practice here is first using it inline, but also take a look at the policy. There's two built-in policies, one called default and one called strict. I'd like you to get to using the strict policy. The default policy, and again, in today's business considerations, really getting to the strict is absolutely essential to stop today's attacks. So the default policy just is not stringent enough. Do you go in tomorrow and change your policy to strict? Absolutely not. I want you to be able to get to strict, and that's being able to work, take a look through and make sure you're not blocking critical systems there is a potential for false positives, or maybe you have an errant system, maybe you have an infected system. But being able to get to a strict profile and more is absolutely essential. So let's talk command and control. One of the other key capabilities here is our command and control detection. It's under the anti-spyware capabilities, and this is, again, one of the key parts in the attack lifecycle. And being able to detect the command and control going back and forth is absolutely essential. And so, again, from a policy standpoint, we are taking a look here at the network patterns of outbound communications of malware, samples, attackers, things like remote access Trojans, things like Zeus, things like any new malware that may be coming out. And one of the key things that's in here are the different samples and tools, as exactly what Eric was demonstrating and working with, and we're creating protection and getting those out there. One of the big things in here is our DNS C2 signatures. Where do those come from? Those come from Wildfire. So we're up to about 15,000 DNS C2 signatures a day. And this is absolutely some of the best protection in the industry that's out there, because those don't exist in anyone else's solutions. Why? Again, those were samples that were sent to you and you and you and you and you that Wildfire analyzed and then created the DNS signatures automatically. So these are the things you absolutely want to be looking at. Every morning you're coming in, you're running reports, taking a look at what systems may be triggering with these spyware C2 signatures, the DNS signatures. So that's one of the key things as you're looking at. They're highly accurate, they're really reliable. Together also with our passive DNS, hopefully you saw Wei Shu's presentation on predicting malicious domains. He's one of our key threat researchers in doing this. We're adding a lot of key things, intelligence from third-party sources as well. So in creating your policy starts with, I'd like you to clone the strict policy, and the strict policy has the default action of block for medium above. Change that to sinkhole. How many of you in the room have implemented the DNS sinkhole? Okay, not enough of you. Okay, top tip, number 23. One of the other tips when you get back, look at implementing the DNS sinkhole. So PAN-OS 6.0 and above, that's one of the key features and one of the key things it allows you to do. When these C2 DNS signatures trigger, the source IP will most likely be your DNS server. So you'll be sitting there scratching your head as you go in and start investigating and go, hey John, thanks very much. You've told me my DNS server is infected. Why? Because the last IP that made the request was your DNS server. So in PAN-OS 6.0, we added the capability for DNS sinkholing, where we're forging the DNS response so that you set up a IP address or loopback on a loopback interface. The instructions are really, really good. There's a couple of videos from partners that are out there. Your SEs or consulting engineers will work with you. And so what you do is you set a DNS sinkhole. No changes are required on your DNS server. No changes needed on the endpoint. Just make that clear. And what that does is when an infected system reaches out to maliciousdomain.com and says, where's that IP address? It says, oh, it's over here. 10.10.10.10 is where the infected, where you want to go to. And so it routes everything in there. It makes it absolutely drop dead clear where the infected system is. So it's one of those things I want you to be able to take advantage of. That way you can leverage the 15,000 signatures a day we're delivering and make sure those outbound requests aren't going out. Again, if you're using the default policy may have those to alert. And again, now you're in that conundrum of just having a lot of alerts. That DNS request is still going out, and it's an opportunity for that DNS, the next request to be different, and you've let the communication establish. So that's why you want to block. Again, we're breaking part of that attack lifecycle so that you can interrupt a key part of that attack. We've got a lot of IPS events, we've got a lot of spyware events, we've got Wildfire events. What are you going to do with those? There's a couple key events, Wildfire events, critical IPS events, and maybe high severity IPS events. I want you to do something with those. And maybe it's set up an email so that your security, your IR team actually gets notifications. If they're actually going into a black hole and not going anywhere and no one's acting on it, you got a bunch of logs sitting around, then you're not doing anything. So this is one of the, so Splunk's another option. Again, as long as the right people are taking a look at it. I'll give a quick story. So again, hopefully Michael Breen's not in the room. One of our consulting engineers was doing a demo at a customer, and he actually set up it was grabbing malware to demonstrate the effectiveness of Wildfire and downloading a bunch of malicious samples on a system. And unfortunately, he forgot to disconnect the VPN, and he was still connected back to the corporate network. And so about 2 minutes into his demo, he's demoing, he was like, oh, there's Wildfire events right and left. His cell phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing. And so there was the IT security guys calling him going, what the heck are you doing? Get your network, stop doing that whatsoever. And the customer was sitting there going, wow, how did you guys do that? What process do you have in place? Because the customer was actually more impressed with the process to get directly to the employee and start resolving the incident than the actual, the cool Wildfire demo he was doing. So that's one of the things. You've got a critical event going on. You've got lots of malicious samples. What the heck are you going to do? So having that notification plan in place, the incident response process, will really make sure you do something with those events. Anything to add?
Yeah, so before you, quick comment there about the DNS sinkhole. Lesson learned. Before you actually activate that, I strongly suggest that you go back and review your implementation and your deployment of your DNS servers, okay? While the PAN is doing its thing, you may very well find that you just knocked over the DNS servers, so lesson learned off of that. So 15,000 signatures a day. Well, let me see. That's interesting because that works because we caught in 1 week almost 2,000 incidents just from that alone that weren't caught by anything else. So that's good reason unto itself to deploy that. So
yeah, I mean, in an attack lifecycle, again, the command and control and that DNS query may be the only thing you have. And so that's a key thing. And again, putting together that indicator together with other things. You're going to drill in and take a look, what's going on with George's system over in marketing? How did something get in? Oh, start taking a look at all those other IPS events or maybe some of the endpoint security events and taking a look. Is it always guaranteed you've got a major breach going on? No, but it's going to be one of those key indicators because you don't have many opportunities to break and stop the kill chain.
Well, this is one more supplement to two truisms that we all know. The growing ineffectiveness of anti-malware, traditional anti-malware. We all know what that looks like. It's pretty darn poor these days. It's in the teens, depending upon who you're looking at. And we all know that the real problem is between the keyboard and the chair. Okay?
You need layer 8 protection.
Yes. Humans are fallible, and they're going to click on these things, so you need to do something that, frankly, to the extent possible, takes the humans out of the loop.
Yeah, I was going to try and tie in a Mythbusters theme that employees should be allowed to download anything they want and click on anything they want, right? Let's bust that myth, right? That'd be way too simple to bust. Yeah. All right, so let's get on to another one. So we talked about reducing the attack surface, preventing known threats. Let's get into detecting and preventing unknown threats. So we talked about malware. Let's talk about exploits. So what files are actually more dangerous than PE files? Come on. What's that? PDF. One of my favorites. PDF documents and Office documents. Two of the things we absolutely can't just block by default and we use every day from a business standpoint. And unfortunately, the adversaries know that, and they're going to do, again, they're sitting there every single day trying to get inside your enterprise. So they're going to use these document types to be able to trick and exploit their way into your organization. So if we take a look at these, they're going to exploit vulnerabilities. Again, the file types here, we've got malicious PDFs, malicious Office documents, we've got malware, APK, Java files. But let's take a look at this. Who wouldn't open the attachment included in this email? It looks really, really convincing, and it may be targeted right at your purchasing department or your accounts payable group. So this is one I grabbed off of PhishMe's website. And what occurs here, you've got a malicious PDF. It exploits a PDF reader vulnerability when opened. And again, hopefully all of you went to the Traps Advanced Endpoint Security where they demoed a lot of this directly here. It then downloads an executable as an additional follow-on payload, and then you're compromised. It's that simple. And so that's the unfortunate. So PhishMe had this 15-page blog post. I'm sitting there going, they're talking, looking at with the hex editor and looking at packet captures and this and that. I'm like, come on, let's give this a try. Let's send it to Wildfire, see what it thinks. So there's two different solutions for mitigating exploit files. So Traps is a perfect example of being able to provide the protection against this type of malicious PDF. But I'm going to talk about Wildfire here shortly, right here. So here, again, I think we talked about, let's upload this to Wildfire. And again, what Wildfire does, it automatically creates, if it determines a file is malicious, it'll create AV definitions, it'll create DNS signatures, it'll create, add it to PanDB, malware category, and URL filtering, and then we're also creating command and control signatures. So here, Wildfire does analysis for PDF and Office documents. We do static analysis first. In this case, it took a look and said, essentially, there's some nasty stuff in here. I need to look a little bit further. And so here, we then see the dynamic analysis. It takes a look through, performed a heap spray. Is that bad? Yeah, that's probably bad. Modified the Windows registry, crashed when loaded. Yeah, definitely bad things going on there. This is a malicious PDF. And so one of the things that Wildfire did then was automatically created AV definitions within 15 minutes. So every one of the users out there, every Palo Alto Networks firewall, it's not PAN, by the way, Palo Alto Networks firewall, Renee would...
It's too long to say.
We automatically are creating the DNS C2 signatures. Those domain where the file came from and where the malicious PDF interacted from, it's those C2 signatures are automatically generated so you can prevent any C2 communication. And then we also added the URL to PanDB URL filtering so that if anyone's trying to download the file, it does that automatically as well. And so that's the key thing. When Lee was talking about, and Nir were talking about prevention needs to be automatic, this is just one simple example of that. So again, I see examples right and left every day, whether it's a malicious PDF or a malicious Office document. It's far too trivial. And again, I think Eric created some of those. In 60 seconds, you too, take the social engineering toolkit part of Kali, can create a malicious document. One of the things the adversaries are doing is they're taking your documents. So some of you may look at it and go, who'd fall for that? They're going to take your documents, and again, they know everyone inside your organization, and they're going to reuse that, add a little bit of nasty maliciousness, and send it to the right people so that they get them to open it. And so that's one of the things where all of a sudden, people are going to open it. And so today's business environment, again, I would not open a PDF or Office document unless it's had that additional layer of protection, both with Wildfire as well as the Traps Advanced Endpoint Protection. So in setting up your policy for Wildfire, making sure you're sending all file types. Hopefully you're already blocking PE files so you don't have to send those to Wildfire, right? If not, let's go ahead, make sure you're forwarding those, forward all the different supported file types, and get the visibility. So, Tim, sounds really easy, right?
It's not that easy. Nope. Back to what we've been saying. I mean, think about the business considerations here. I'm a security guy. Most of you are security people. First thing that gets blamed, it's always a firewall problem. What is this? You're holding me up. I got a deliverable. Okay, we've got 80 different products that we ship, and somebody's always releasing. So, and you all have, I'm sure, in your lines of business, whatever that may be, you've got similar schedules or constraints that are going to prevent you from, if you will, a simple implementation off of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of at stake, right? And again, the people inside your organization are going to be who's targeted. And so that's one of the things that, how can you reduce the amount of risk knowing that business needs to work every single day? We need PDFs, we need Office documents, but we need to feel very confident and secure that these are safe.
So we ship source code or compiled code off of that, but what goes along with that are, of course, administrator manuals, all the documentation. Customers want to know strategic roadmaps. Strategic roadmaps are not in code. They're obviously in PowerPoint or related things. So there's a constant need, and all of you have that as well, that those file types, which as dangerous they are, that these need to be exchanged on a regular basis.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and starting to wrap it up here. So a couple key things here. Again, this isn't meant to be a comprehensive list, and these are just different examples. I think we've got a few minutes, so I'm going to actually see about including a few more. But the key thing here is taking a look at what we're putting together. You heard from Brett, you heard from Lee. Best practices and enabling you are a key focus for us in being able to give you content, give you information. So depending on your deployment, whether it's a data center or whether it's a perimeter, whether it's, again, whether you're an enterprise or higher ed or K-12 or you're finance or banking, each one of your risks and protection level are really going to be different. So there is no one magic thing. So let's give one last thing. So who wants more best practices? All right, piece of cake. So this is even a more comprehensive list. I'm going to cover a couple additional things here. So let's go ahead and take a look. How many of you have taken a look at the Botnet Report? Okay, so this is the next thing I want you to take a look at when you get back. The Botnet Report is actually a really interesting report. It's been in the product for quite a while, and it takes a look at some interesting things. If you have systems visiting a domain that's dynamic DNS, if you have systems browsing to IP domains instead of URLs, or systems visiting newly registered domains, this is one of the few really heuristic reports that's in the product that, again, you don't necessarily have to send it to Splunk or SIM to go do, but it's taking a look at unknown category URLs. It's taking a look at systems visiting a URL categorized as malware. It's taking a look at systems using unknown applications. So take a look at this report. There's a lot of different ways to tune the report. You may not see anything. To be able to run this report requires two things: threat prevention subscription and a URL filtering subscription. Take a look at the severity 4 and 5 events. The severity events are kind of laid out pretty clearly that's in there. And again, this is one different way to take a look at exactly what's going on within your Palo Alto Networks firewall and be able to gain the upper edge and take a look at. And again, there's no one guaranteed thing. Aha, here's the system that's infected and part of the breach. It's one more indicator that you'll be able to leverage. Okay? Sound good?
Yeah, so actually, while you're on that topic there, John, so this is an example of the type of reporting that the PANs can do that is actually very helpful for me and probably many of you in the room. This helps you to sell your program to the senior executives. This is what we're up against. This is why we need to do the types of actions that we're doing. So use this type of information and help to get your message across on what it is you're trying to do and why. And that doesn't even have to be IT executives. In fact, it's probably more interesting for non-IT executives to have an understanding of, no, this is us. This is what we're actually facing. So use this as, if you will, a sales effort for your security programs.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you can this is gaining that visibility. What do you mean we have systems connecting to unknown applications or connecting to dynamic DNS domains? Are those potentially bad or dangerous?
So why are we spending so much money on information security? Let me give you some examples.
Yeah. All right, let's talk one last one. So data exfiltration. So the file blocking capability, first off starting it with file identification, gives you visibility into what's coming in and out of your enterprise. And this is one of those things that, again, I want you to have essentially every file type possible to get visibility into what's going in or out. One of the things I want you to look for is encrypted file types. Encrypted RAR, PDF, encrypted zip. One of the other things is, what is the other intellectual property inside your organization? Maybe you make tractors or cars, and there's CAD files associated with those. If there's not supported file types, work through your SE or a partner and file a feature request to see if we can add those additional file types.
Yeah, all of you have some intellectual property in your organizations, regardless of the organizations you care about. For my particular organization in the tech industry, everything is about intellectual property protection. And I'm actually less concerned about our intellectual property. I'm far more concerned about our customers' intellectual property that they share with us, okay? We develop software that allows chip companies to design chips. Those designs, which we then test for them and make sure that they are efficient, we verify those designs, those are worth an awful lot of money. Okay? And we are taking those designs and vetting them from competitive companies against each other, and there's a lot of other people who'd like to get their hands on those as well. So I'm actually more concerned, far more concerned about what's going out than what's coming in. Because if it goes out and it's someone else's third party, or probably someone else's intellectual property protection that we have, that's a really bad day for me.
I mean, part of that is, again, this isn't meant to replace DLP. This is the idea here is visibility. We're giving you that visibility into applications and protocols. The fact that someone is FTPing an encrypted RAR, you can create the policy to find out. Why is this encrypted RAR file leaving someone in marketing? Or better yet, I have a web server. Why is there an encrypted RAR leaving my web server? And again, this is, again, one more powerful bit of information that you have that you can take a look at and find out so that you can take a look at possible other indicators. So it's absolutely a key part. So take a look, enable logging on all file types, ensure you have alerting on outbound. So again, leverage the reports. This is one of those things, you can create a report just showing encrypted file types. And so this can, again, give you more visibility into what's going on. And there's not much risk in not doing this.
But this is great eye candy, frankly, for those executives that don't even know what a RAR file is.
Yeah, yeah. Especially as we're looking at applications. Again, there's a lot of different applications that you're getting visibility with the Palo Alto Networks solution. So I'm going to actually stop and wrap up there. We've got a couple minutes for questions. How are we doing?
3 minutes.
Should we? Okay, we got a minute or two for questions, so I'll stop right there. Again, reduce the attack surface, prevent known threats, be able to detect unknown threats. I can't see any questions. Okay, question back left. Of all the research and data compilation, what we looked at, is there any one thing that kind of stands out? And I think the four that I highlighted first, not having an effective file blocking policy, being a little too lax on IPS and spyware protection, not taking advantage of Wildfire. Those are the biggest four things. And if there was anything you walked out of today, it would be taking a look and leveraging the heck out of those, because that really starts to raise the bar higher and higher and higher, and exactly what Lee was talking about. The more that we can do to get the adversary to change their behavior, the better we're doing. Today, we've made it far too easy for the adversaries to attack us and infect an endpoint and be able to bypass all our lines of protection. Yeah. Quite far left. Actually, let's do that afterwards in the expert labs upstairs. Question was how to do DNS sinkholing. All right, so last question.
Just really quick, because I know a lot of us got to leave it to me. Any way we can get a copy of these slides?
You will get a copy of these slides, and there's more hidden in here. There'll be more guides that we're putting out. So again, I know it was quick, but I wanted to make sure you walked away with good stuff. I'm going to be out here at the end of the hall if there's any more questions. Thanks very much.